Good morning. Officially this time. Today we once again explore the wheel, a symbol that is so universal and so ancient and so deeply woven into the human psyche that we barely even notice it anymore. You've seen them 1,000 times every day in 1,000 different ways. You see them in mandalas, in Celtic knots, on Buddhist prayer wheels, in chariots, which we see all the time, and sun discs, and maybe even your car tires on the way over here. So naturally, thinking that it sounded very clever, I named this sermon, "Oh Wheelie." I thought that it was a cute little pun, right? Truthfully, when I chose that title, I had, as usual, absolutely no idea what specifically we'd be talking about today, but I extra didn't know this week. Like usually I have some nudges toward at least the end of the week. Nope, I had nothing until yesterday at a wedding, and I told Clark, he was running sound there, I said, I'm thinking about exploring the idea of spokes, right? Because spokes support the wheel. But I wasn't sure where to go with that. And I still wasn't sure where to go with it when I sat down and started looking for the inspirational readings, because when all else fails, look for inspiration, right? So I asked my friend Google, I said, where in the Bible does it talk about spokes? And it said, in the book of the prophet Ezekiel. And then I went and I read Ezekiel. And suddenly the title felt less like a cute pun and more like a warning label. Because once you read Ezekiel, especially in the Lamsa translation, you will say, oh, really? See, in most biblical translations, whomever was doing the translating tried to make things make sense for the reader. And so their work was colored by their interpretation, their understanding. But George Lamsa simply translated ancient Peshitta Aramaic into English. And if the words didn't make sense, it wasn't his job to make them. And that is the beauty of his work, and it's the reason why I almost exclusively reference Lamsa's translation in my work. I want the words to be as they were intended to be, not some scholar's thoughtful interpretation. At least I thought I did, until yesterday. Now, for those of you who might have been blinking your way confusedly through our first inspirational reading from the book of Ezekiel, chapter 1, verses 15 through 27, I did throw a little bit from verse 5 in there, just to be transparent. Let me remind you of what you heard, okay? Ezekiel, this poor, hapless, once everyday guy and sudden prophet, sees a whirlwind come from a cloud. And he says, and I looked, and behold, out of the midst of it came the likeness of 4 living creatures. And this was their appearance. They had the likeness of a man. Now, from here, I imagine a couple of scenarios. He may have said with great significance, with great weight, and the tonal quality of a wonderful storyteller, that first part. Okay, and then with a pregnant pause, ended with, they had the likeness of a man. And the gathered crowd, all of them who had been spellbound and leaning in to hear this story, immediately riled up and cries of, seriously, buddy? You had a vision of a man. That's it, right? And so he immediately spun the incoherent tale, which followed and followed and followed, because he goes on to say that these men he saw had 4 faces. And they had wings that sounded like waterfalls, and there was a sapphire throne floating overhead, and wheels full of eyes moving in every direction without turning. And that was just the first, paragraph. Okay, poor Ezekiel. He's standing there trying to describe describe something that looks like an angel, a chariot, a storm, a carnival ride, and a celestial traffic accident all at once. But here's the other scenario I envision. Have you ever tried to explain a spiritual experience that had no words? Something so significant that it defied language? It comes out sounding a lot like that. I remember the first time that I had one of those experiences where spirit opened up so completely and so suddenly that I was simultaneously crying and laughing and convinced that I was about to poof into a cloud of glitter. And later someone asked me, what happened to you in there? And I said something very, very eloquent, of course. Just like I said, everything, but also nothing. And there was light. And they nodded like they understood. And I knew that they didn't, but how could they? Experiences like that, they bypass our vocabulary. Ezekiel wasn't confused, he was overwhelmed. He wasn't mistaken, he was trying. He was doing his best to drag infinity through the tiny keyhole of the doorway of human language. And sometimes so are we. And now after all of that cosmic mystery was listed for our fearless presider, Mr. Reverend Paul Savoy, to read, I turned to another book to find our second inspirational reading in the works of Ernest Holmes, who decides in the middle of, I've read the whole thing, of a very profound lecture, he decides right there to talk about shirts and funerals and Thursdays, fish and a pearl of great price, all in the same breath. You gotta love that guy, right? If you read his actual lectures, he was full of joy.
Did he know George Lamsa by chance?
I have a feeling he did. Nancy, you would know the answer. Did he know George Lamsa? Holmes? No, she doesn't know. All right, I have a feeling he did. But see, here's the thing. If Ezekiel represents the places where spirit overwhelms us, then Holmes represents the places where we overwhelm ourselves. Holmes is all of us when we try so hard to be deep that we end up talking about laundry day. Okay, I have been there. He reminds us that spirituality isn't always thunder and lightning. Sometimes it's silliness. Sometimes it's rambling. For me, a lot of times it's rambling. Sometimes it's just being human. I remember once in my teens, I'd really gotten into the Beatles' Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band album, and I'd been reading about their time with Maharishi Mahesh Yogi. And I'd been reading it for weeks before and after the Beatlemania conference. Did anybody ever go to that? Beatlemania? Yeah. Okay, I went every year, and this was sometime in probably the mid to late 80s. I dated myself there, didn't I? Somehow I had gotten it into my head during this period of time that with the help of that album and plus some meditation, as I understood it to be at 15 years old, I could achieve enlightenment. And so I had candles lit and incense going and the whole setup, and the music, of course, playing in the background. I had all of the outward trappings and woo-woo vibes going on, okay? I had even folded my not incredibly flexible, even at that young age, legs into a full lotus. You know the one where both feet are up on top. Yeah, I wasn't coming out of that easily or quickly. And as I'm sitting there, waiting, my 22-pound tomcat walked daintily across my lap, as daintily as a 22-pound cat can, sat facing me, looked up and sneezed right in my face. And looking back, I imagine that was his way of saying, sweetheart, relax. But I also imagine that particular cat, who lived to be 22, his name was Marmalade. I have a strong suspicion that he knew a little something about enlightenment. Holmes is that enlightened sneeze. He is the reminder that you don't need to strain, you don't need to perform, you don't need to figure it all out. Spirit can guide you even when you're rambling about shirts. Maybe especially then. Now I want to go back to Ezekiel's wheelies, but I want to look at it through a different lens. So let's draw some parallels here. Not so far-fetched ones. So without rereading all of his great, many, and confusing words, here is what is emphasized. The wheels are beside the living creatures. Each creature has its own wheel. They are linked, paired, mirrored. The wheels move in perfect unity with the beings. This suggests conscious motion, not mechanical. Their rims are high, dreadful, and full of eyes. Not eyes as a decoration, but eyes as awareness. In Aramaic symbolism, the eyes represent perception, consciousness, omnidirectionality. Okay, spirit moves within the wheels. George Lamsa's no edits, no cheats, literal phrasing emphasizes this. The wheels aren't vehicles. They are the movement of divine mind itself. It describes a wheel within a wheel. This is not the two wheels crossing like a gyroscope. Okay, in Aramaic mysticism, it is the experience of perceiving inner reality, outer reality, spiritual realm, and material realm, all simultaneously, the multidimensional nature of consciousness. The key phrase in this passage is, wherever the spirit went, they went. The creatures in his vision do not choose direction. The wheels do not choose motion. There is no turning, no deviation. All movement is powered by the spirit within. This is Ezekiel's profound metaphysical revelation. But there is no such thing as separate motion. All being moves by one moving. Or to simplify, all is one. There is nothing outside of that one, which brings us back to my whole idea about the spokes. Ezekiel is describing a cosmic wheel system in which nothing stands alone. Nothing moves independently. Everything is inter-supported. Spirit is the hub. Divine intelligence is the axle. Each face, each of us is a spoke. And here's where I want to be very clear, because sometimes when people hear nothing moves independently, the mind jumps to, well, great, so I have no control, no choices, no influence, no ability to change anything. Absolutely not. That is the wrong perspective. Unity does not erase agency. Unity erases isolation. A spoke is not trapped because it can't fly off on its own. A spoke is strengthened because it's connected to the hub. It is supported. It is aligned, carried. Ezekiel wasn't showing us a system of fate. He was showing us a system of support. The creatures were aligned. They didn't turn because they didn't need to. Their interconnection to spirit was so complete that every movement was the right movement. That's not fatalism. That is freedom. There's freedom from confusion, freedom from wobbling between choices. It's freedom from the fear of getting it wrong, freedom from the illusion of aloneness, because you have never been less than beautiful, even when you have thought you failed, and you have never ever been alone. Now back to those eyes on the wheels. They are not the eyes of judgment. They are the eyes of awareness. Every direction you could possibly travel, your wheel has eyes there. And here's the beautiful part. Every person has different eyes, different angles, different insights, different wisdom, different stories, different strengths and sensitivities. And here is where Ernest Holmes comes back into this. He said, every heart knows its own joy and its own grief. It must bear it and share it, but know this. There is a transcendence in man. They call it the man of the heart, the angel of his presence, the Christ, the Buddha, the illumined. You don't see what I see. I don't see what you see. But together, as one wheel, we see everything we need to move forward. Your awareness adds to the whole. Your truth contributes to the movement. Your perspective is a blessing to the wheel of this community. Each of us is a spoke with our own eye of wisdom, helping the wheel move in harmony. And Spirit, the hub, takes all of those perspectives, all of those eyes, all of those lived experiences, and moves the wheel exactly where it needs to go. Not because we're controlled, but because we're connected. And that connection is what allows us to live lives that don't wobble or collapse or break under strain. When your center is Spirit and your spokes are supported, your wheel is aware, and you move with purpose, with steadiness, with grace. And you don't have to force it. You don't have to push the rim of your life. You don't have to white-knuckle your way through decisions. You just strengthen your spokes, your gratitude, your compassion, your presence, and Spirit moves the wheel. And this is why our gratitude practice back there matters so much. Every single slip of paper that you place in that wheel, in the narthex each week, that is one of those eyes of awareness, a moment of clarity, a glimpse of the good, a way of saying, I see this, I honor this. Gratitude isn't just a nice habit, although it is polite. It is one of the most powerful spokes on the wheel of your spiritual journey, because gratitude is a form of very, very clear sight. It helps you perceive what's working, what's growing, what's healing, what's building. And the more that you notice the good, the more the wheel of your life turns in the direction of good. Your spokes get stronger, your life becomes steadier, your motion becomes smoother, your inner alignment becomes clearer. Each gratitude slip that you write doesn't just go into a big fancy looking basket, okay? It reinforces your wheel. And we will have actual factual evidence to support what I am saying by February. So hang in there. Each thing that you write, week by week, paper by paper, no matter how big or how small, awareness by awareness, you are building spiritual structure. You are laying that solid foundation. You are doing exactly what Ezekiel witnessed. You're being supported, being guided, being moved, being carried by Spirit within the wheel of life. And just like those eyes on the rims, your gratitudes become points of awareness, helping your life see good in every direction you may travel. I got to turn my page. So today, please do this. As you add your slips of gratitude, there are cards on the back table, pens, plenty. Write down everything you're grateful for. Wow. See, this is why I write the words on the page. And then you slide it between the ribbons. And as you do that, I invite you to hold this truth in your mind. Okay, you are one spoke in the beautiful wheel of this community. Your gratitude strengthens the whole. Again, we will see evidence. Your awareness blesses the whole, and we will see evidence. And your presence keeps the wheel turning with love. Let your center be spirit. Let your spokes be supported. Let your eyes, your gratitudes, stay open. And let the wheel of life roll forward in grace. Thank you.